everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how writers use research to improve their writing. Now, I know that some of you may be familiar with this as people who have written research and information writing pieces. If you've done a research paper, if you've written a how-to, if you've ever read something and gathered facts from it to share with other people, then you're really familiar with what research looks like. But research in the real world doesn't always result in the production or the creation of some 3 to 5 or 10 page paper that's full of citations and annotations. Some of the most important research that we do doesn't necessarily come from reading, although reading is a beautiful place to gather some facts and information. For example, in the story that I'm writing, I'm talking about how I would spend summer mornings visiting rabbits underneath this dilapidated ice cream truck at the back of our property. Now, to this day, I don't know why that was there. I don't know, where it came from. But I do know this. I grew up in times that were rather challenging. There was a lot of unemployment during that time. As an adult, I know that where I live in Buffalo, New York, is not necessarily the most privileged place on the face of the earth. And the people that live here we're known as the city of good neighbors. And that's because we've learned to rely on one another, I think, in ways that perhaps wealthier people don't. And so there's a lot that I could read about the history of Buffalo, our demographic, what it was like during the 1970s for blue-collar workers who lived here, and that was my dad for sure. The facts that I gather from that research would really enrich my story, and I could work them into my story in a way that would make it even better. I can also gather some facts about that time by interviewing the people who were there, asking people, why was that ice cream truck there? I've never done that before, and I could. Interviewing people who were a part of that experience that you're writing about, or even people who weren't necessarily there but knew others who were, they might have some facts for you, some details and information, or at the very least, a perspective or a point of view that might make your writing better. Artifacts are a really important thing to go looking for. Objects from that time period. What if I had a photo of that truck? What if I had objects that were in my backyard from that time, toys that I used to play with that maybe my mom held on to? What if there were some objects, like maybe she kept a scrapbook or a notebook about her gardening practices? Those could all become amazing details for my story. I might also, because perhaps I can't get back to that time in the 1970s, I might watch some videos about that time period. Videos that were set during that time period to give me an idea of how people dressed back then, because I don't necessarily remember. Things that were on their minds, things that might have something to do with the story that I experienced or the way that people behaved back then. It could really help me understand and illuminate quite a bit. I've taken those different approaches for conducting the kind of research that elevates small moment stories, and I've created a chart for you. I'm going to take a picture of it and drop it into the links for this lesson. So make sure that when you go back to the website page that you scroll all the way to the bottom, and you're going to see those different approaches. Because what I'd like you to do today or over the next series of days is I would really like you to do a little bit of research, either by reading, watching something, listening to something, interviewing someone, finding an object or an artifact, making some observations. And I'd like you to gather facts from those different experiences and different sources to add to your story. For example, I found this when I was thinking about planning this lesson. This is a picture of me, the year that I was doing this with the rabbits. So this is who I was then. This is what I looked like. This is how I dressed. You can even kind of tell that my arms are kind of tan in this picture from playing outside so much. And there's some interesting details here when I zoom in on this picture that are really revealing. For instance, my mom, she made that dress for me. And it has Raggedy Ann on it because I loved Raggedy Ann when I was little. And the fabric is actually sewn upside down because my mom was new to that kind of creativity. And it reminded me a lot of who my mom was back then when I was little. She was a very creative person. She gardened, she made Christmas ornaments with me, she sewed almost all of my clothes. And I had a baby sister back then, as you'll see in my story, and so she was very busy with that. And she also worked full time too. So all of these details are going to show up in my story as it goes on. And I want to encourage you today to do a little bit of research and to take the details that you tease out of the artifacts you find, the interview that you conduct, the reading that you do, things that you watch or listen to, and use them to elevate your writing. Add them to your writing in some small way. That's my challenge to you today. If you want to see how I made this happen, take a look at the document that I've left in the links. You'll see my mentor text for you there. Have a good day, everybody.